listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 543.
Hello and welcome back to the Outdoors Station. This is a continuation of the recycled 2006 10-part TGO Challenge series, which for some reason is missing from the current listing. Sadly, certain voices you hear, such as Andy Howell, Steve Perry and a few others, are no longer with us. 2006 seems like a long time ago now. However, although equipment that people use may have changed, the spirit, the emotion and the adventure the challenge represents will always remain the same. So for those who like long distance trail diaries, enjoy.
Hi, I'm Steve Perry, and you're listening to Podcast Bob doing the TGO Challenge.
Brace yourself!
Backpackinglight.co.uk.
The UK's first outdoor podcasting show.
Minimum weight.
Maximum fun.
Hello and welcome to this special Backpacking Light podcast 10-part series recorded as part of the 2006 TGO Challenge, sponsored by the Great Outdoors magazine and Berghaus. For those of you who don't know, the TGO Challenge is an organised walk which takes place in May of each year from the west coast to the east coast of Scotland, which is approximately 200 miles. Set up in 1980, the framework and principle is totally unique. It isn't a race or a competition of any kind. The object is to foster good fellowship among walkers within the framework of a challenging expedition. The start consists of 12 sign-out locations on the west coast, from Torridon in the north down to Ardrishaig in the south, and each challenger, solo or group, makes their way via a high route, low route or mixture of the two across Scotland to finish anywhere between Arbroath and Fraserburgh on the east coast. There's a set 2-week window to do this in, and each participant submits their route for inspection prior to departure for safety and advice reasons. The places, however, are limited to 300, and details about the event, if you're interested, and entry forms and past diaries can be found in the October issue of TGO magazine. Each participant makes the challenge as easy or as hard as they wish. The extremes can be a solitary, remote route, sometimes not seeing another person for days on end, or a route which takes in the many social events, perhaps using established accommodation all the way. Most people do a mixture of the two in different forms. This year, I undertook the crossing with my wife Rose, from Lochailort to Dunatar Castle. As we went, I recorded this audio diary to try and capture the atmosphere and to share our experience and those of the many people we met en route. The 2006 TGO Challenge, Part 4. This episode covers 2 days. Tuesday the 16th, which is 25.2 kilometres over the Corrieric Pass down to Garver Bridge where we camped, which is a climb of 989 metres and a descent of 722. Then a really tough day from Garver Bridge over the monoliths before being caught in a storm at the top, a distance of 24.7 kilometres, climbing 1,132 metres and descending 853. We pick up the story just as we leave Fort Augustus and start the Corrieric Pass. On the way out of Fort Augustus on the Corrieric Pass, who should we meet? Still battling on, but P. Wiglet. Slightly hunched over, obviously still in a bit of pain, but I think ready now to tell us the full story of exactly what happened and how she sustained such injuries.
Well, I was walking down a hill, the name of which I've already forgotten.
Garish.
Walking down Garish, and basically just went head over heels. I think I caught my toe on something and just went head over heels and landed in a heap, and I think that I landed with my arm against my ribs and my and against a boulder on the other side, and definitely done something fairly grisly to my ribs. And kind of lay around shouting periodically for Rose and Bob, who disappeared down the hill because I couldn't get up. And then they came back and yanked me back into a sitting position, and so that was that really. So it only took half a moment, but well,
yeah, it was. That was it was the steep section coming down off the mountain, wasn't it? And it was. We were advised not to use poles because it was a bit more of a scramble in certain places, and thankfully we got over the steepest part, the worst part. But we really had to then ferry you down and then go back and forward to get all the rucksacks.
Yep. Well, I felt kind of really bad because obviously 3 rucksacks between 2 people doesn't work very well on a really scrambly hill like that. So I think Rose carried my rucksack down to a flatter part and then got hers down as well. And Bob kind of helped me get down to the flatter bit. And then we stopped for a bit of a rest and decided to see if we could manage to just carry on, see if we could stick the rucksack back on. And so it did, and we kind of got out with Bob and Rose's assistance. But I think that it's about 2:30, was it?
Yeah, it was 2:30 it happened. I think it took us about 4 hours to actually slowly get you off the hill and down. I mean, to be fair, it was you insisted on carrying your rucksack. I was quite happy to carry the rucksack for you, but I think in putting the rucksack on, it actually helped strap the ribs down.
Held it together a little bit, I think. So it was kind of an amazing experience. Not something to be recommended. Definitely a reminder, if a reminder is needed, to take extra special care of where you're putting your crew beans as you come down off the hill. It could have been a great deal worse. Could have been a broken leg or something like that, which clearly would have been an absolute killer. But again, fortunately, Bob, you and Rose had lots of Cuprofen and I had some Panadol extra, and that's helped a lot. So just walked over from Tom Doon yesterday on the road to Fort Augustus and then along the canal where it was flatter. So a bit of a drag, but no real up and downs. I'm going to take the Corriaric Pass today rather than over the Monoliath Mountains, which is the way that I've been hoping to go, and take stock really, I think, when I get to Kingussie. Or what I'm hoping to do, which I've been wanting to do for 2 years, is to go through the Larry Grew, because I've got a date with a big grey man. It's all been arranged, but it may be necessary to go for my kind of low-level alternative through Brown Glen Freshie, but I'm going to see how I feel at Kingussie and see how things are at that stage.
Well, certainly. I mean, you seem to be a bit more hunched over today. You managing okay with this gravel underfoot, because it's not the same as going down the road?
Well, it's not too bad really, because although it's a bit gravelly, it's not bouldery. So, basically, it could be a lot worse than this. Just as we say that, of course, the road's just become nice and flat, which is good. So yeah, it could be a lot worse. It could be worse.
And the Tom Doon Hotel, I think most people have sort of said we've all been a bit disappointed with the accommodation and the sort of people there. What were your thoughts on the place? Well,
mixed, I suppose. I think that when we got there, we were all a bit shell-shocked because we've been sort of experiencing this kind of nightmare for about 4.5 hours, and you kind of sort of expect, really, I think, that you're going to get there and they're going to be like, oh, let me sort it all out. But of course, they didn't know about that, and they've just been getting on with their own stuff. So, but I mean, I was lucky. I got a room. Because the accommodation is not the most, it's not the most luxurious in the world, but it's warm and dry, and there was a bed head, so I could lean up against that. And I think it's a bit mixed, really, to be honest. It's in some ways, it was really good. Dinner was lovely. Breakfast, if you're a veggie, wasn't a lot of it, or at least they sort of cooked a bit of it. But I don't know. I mean, friendly enough.
Yeah, I think the food was great. I just thought the whole place had this sort of air of decay about it, and I understand they've had it for the last 3 years, and most people, I didn't realise most of the rooms, the room you had ensuite, but most rooms didn't, which I thought was a bit pricey for what they were offering.
Yeah, I didn't realise actually till you said this morning that most people didn't have ensuite, but I did, so certainly that was okay for me. I think I would have been a bit surprised if it wasn't ensuite.
Okay.
But yeah, it was all right. But last night I was in. Must do a quick praise for the Caledonian Hotel in Fort Augustus, which was absolutely wonderful. Most friendly and welcoming place. Really lovely. Fantastic breakfast this morning. Could have had marvellous dinner there last night, but I saw the chippy on the canal as I walked past, and as soon as I saw the fish and chips, I knew I had to have them. So I went back and sat outside at a table in the rain and happily ate fish and chips and mushy peas. But the Caledonian Hotel was absolutely wonderful, and so if there's anybody out there thinking of visiting Fort Augustus, then that's where I'd be going if I were you. It's really lovely.
Yes, yeah. Well, I can certainly take in our accommodation, which I think I've already mentioned anyway at the Nehru Lodge. Excellent stuff. Well, the weather's sort of fairly humid, very humid, in fact.
Very clammy.
Yeah, very clammy today. Very grey and overcast. Clouds are relatively low. Can't see the top of the pass, but it's steady going. We've passed the Americans behind us, so hopefully I'll catch up with them later on today and see how they're getting on. Gretchen on her first crossing, and there's another couple that seem to be joining us at the moment, so we'll be chatting with them later.
Well, we're halfway up the Corryeric Pass at the Blackburn Bothy. Following the Yellow Brick Road, the Corryeric Pass is just a long Land Rover track, really, sort of fairly hardcore and underfoot, steady going. It just goes on forever and then goes down the other side, presumably. Gretchen and her grandparents seem to be some distance behind us now, and we've stopped to have a brew at Blackburn Bothy and do our favourite little pastime when we can, and that is dunk the old tootsies, isn't it, lovey?
Yeah, refreshing the feet. I didn't think I was a bit sceptical, but I have to say it is quite nice, and your feet feel much better for it afterwards.
Yeah, we've both got blisters. Mine are slightly worse than Rose, but they're nowhere near as bad as they were. Just taking our boots off. They're nowhere near as bad as they were previous years. I've got them down the outside of my big toes, which is sort of the fairly usual place you get them. Nothing on the heels, but the worst ones are actually on the outside of the little toes, and they're the ones that are the sorest of the bunch. How about you, Rose? What are yours like?
Well, I got this one just developed today, really, and it's because my sock wasn't quite flat, and I kept thinking I'll stop and put it right, and foolishly didn't, and it's just caused a blister on this one toe, so hopefully this is refreshing.
Just a trick, eh? 1, 2, 3. And you put it in for as long as you can manage, which is usually about 30 seconds. But it really does bring the nerve endings alive. Well, while we got our feet in the stream here, I just thought of, if you want to know, I'll let you know. I deal with my blisters by draining them and then putting some antiseptic cream on them, and then really leaving them to air as much as possible. Particularly these nasty little ones on the end of the little toes, which are just very uncomfortable inside the boots. How's your blister? What's yours like?
Well, it's quite small, and
do you want me to drain it?
I think it would be better if we drained it and put some cream on it and see how it goes on.
All right, I'll get the first aid kit and do that out in a second then. I've tried Compeed and various other bits and bobs, but personally they don't work for me at all. Some people swear by them, but I've not had the greatest success. So let's dry these feet off and get the first aid kit out.
And put some Vaseline on, perhaps.
Oh yeah, we've got some Vaseline with aloe vera in it.
That's been really nice, haven't you? You said you've used that. And
Yeah, I put that on the blisters, but I've also used it for wind chafing around my mouth and on my face, and actually it's been it seems to encourage healing very, very well. Where did you get it from?
Oh, just any chemists seem to stock it, really.
What, Boots?
Your Boots and, yeah, any Lloyd's.
We've been using the cream that we sell. We thought we'd give it a good try.
Well, we brought one of us, well, mentioning no names.
It's always my fault.
Well, we brought the refreshing brine, which I brought, and Bob was supposed to bring the other one, which is
The
actually
foot balm.
the one that helps prevent blisters, which we left at home.
Well, the refreshing one's nice though, isn't it?
It is. It's been very refreshing to put on
Yeah, no,
of an evening at the end of the day.
it does do what it says on the box. Actually, it does make your feet feel a lot better and smell a lot nicer as well. But when you wake up in the morning, they do feel fine. But I do think the other one would have been the right one to bring. But you didn't put it on the list.
Oh right, so it's my fault now.
Anyway, the weather's sort of it's just dull and overcast. Really, we've had it's not nowhere been as good as the first few days. The first few days weather was changeable, but changeable and slightly on the better side. It's actually sort of generally miserable, I think, at the moment. And I suspect when we get to the top, it's going to be very cold indeed with that wind.
It's cold wind, isn't it?
But we see the Stefan and Terry Leyland up ahead of us, so hopefully we'll catch up with them and we'll have a chat with them when we've finished our brew. Pass me the towel, will you?
We eventually caught up with Terry and Stefan near the bridge on the pass. And Stefan began to explain how he suddenly found himself agreeing to take part in the challenge when all he thought he was doing was going to a birthday party.
Well, it was last year, it was his 60th birthday. We all gathered in Manchester for a curry night. And, having a few beers and a few whiskies. He handed the question over to me and says, "You fancy doing it, son?"
In front of everybody.
In front of everybody. And me being a bit dizzy at the time. I agreed to it. Probably because, he's 60 now and he's going to be slowing down now. Although I hope he does get a few more under his belt. He wanted me to do it and I agreed to it because I always thought, doing it with my dad, he can think when he's 80, 70, 80 that he did it with his son. And here I am now.
Excellent. So I believe you're not a sort of a walker with a great amount of walking history, shall we say? So it's all been a bit of a shock, or some parts of it have been a bit of a shock to you.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a shock, but as I was a lad when I did live in Manchester, we used to go over the Lake District, go to a little village called Edale, the start of the official to that, the Pennine Way, and we used to go over Kinder, and I did really enjoy it, but then I moved away and I lost a bit of touch with it, so I'm reliving my soul at the moment.
And so what are we now? This is Tuesday today, so we're 5 days in. So can you remember your route where you've been for the last 5 days?
Well, we started over at Glenelg and worked our way over to I forget now actually. Where was it?
Well, we saw you over at Tom Doon the other night, didn't we?
Yeah, Tom Doon. And then we made our way over to Invergarry, and then
Down to Fort Augustus.
Down to Fort Augustus. And now we're on the
Correct pass down to
Correct pass.
Melgarve Bothy.
Yeah.
And you're carrying all your kit, aren't you? You're camping out mostly if you can.
Yeah. We've took the tent. It is a bit hard, camping every time, but it depending on the weather. But I do actually prefer camping in the tent because it makes me feel that I've got more out of the challenge.
I understand yesterday when you arrived at Fort Augustus, or today, you actually parcelled up some stuff and sent it back.
Yeah.
So just to give people an idea what not to bring or what they may not use, can you tell us some of the items you sent back?
Well, as you go along, you don't really, you think you have to take a lot of clothing. I took quite a few Ron Hills, but to be honest with you, I've wore one pair for 3 days, and then changed into a fresh pair, and I had a couple more pair, and I thought, well, I can't see me needing them now, so I sent them back. And I also had a frying pan in my cooking kit, which I've not used yet, and I think to myself, I don't think I'm going to use it again. So and bits and bobs, food, that a cup of soups and stuff like that. That is just excess weight that you don't really need, to be honest with you.
So you stripped right back down to basics now, and you're feeling a bit happier with your pack?
Yeah, I've only lost maybe about 3-4 pounds, but
it all makes a difference, though, doesn't it?
It makes a difference, yeah. It really does make a difference.
And this track underfoot's pretty hard going on the feet, and I can see you hobbling a bit today. And I know you've suffered a bit with blisters. How did that come about?
It's like the terrain, the rocks twisting your feet. Basically, the boots are not worn in correctly, and the road walking is a bit hard underfoot, to be honest with you. So if you could find a bit of the grass verge to walk on, I reckon that's a good idea.
And you walked down the side of the Caledonian Canal, didn't you, yesterday? It's a bit of a breezy place, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. Yeah, we was going to walk the roadway, but we'd already walked the 7 miles and thought to ourselves, the canal's a better option. But it's nice to have that bit of wind, because it does cool you down and keep the engine going,
Yeah. I suppose the next refreshment point is Kingoosey, is it?
Yeah.
So I expect to see you in the bar at the Bothy at Kingoosey.
Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, it's always nice to finish the day off with a nice meal and a pint. Like last night, I only had half a lager, which is, it's nice to have a lager, but I prefer to have a water.
And have you found the people you've met who are doing the challenge? Because there's all sorts of people doing it. From your perspective, the first time, have they been, friendly and welcoming?
Yeah, I think they have, to be honest with you. Listening to the stories and their past experiences, it's quite fascinating. And finding some of the older people, carrying them packs and climbing these hills, and some good, some really steep hills, to be honest with you. And I have the utmost respect for people like that, because me being 31, and they've doubled the age, the respect is there, to be honest with you.
Brilliant. So, final question, of course, is if you've done it once, or you're sort of first to the third of the way through, I suppose, would you be tempted at this moment in time to do it again?
To be honest with you, the first 3 days, my mind was telling me questions, and I knew it would. The voices, your conscience telling you to give up, but as your legs start wearing in, the engine's firing off all cylinders, you're always thinking, I take each day as it comes, but every day that goes by is always a day getting to the end. And if I did get to the end, the feeling that I would get, you'll think of that for the rest of your life. And the certificate, not everybody will have one of them. And at the end, I will do it again. If my dad asks me the question again, I think I will. Yeah.
Right, so we are Wednesday morning the 17th. Just a quick recap. We went over the Corrieric Pass yesterday with Terry and his son Stefan, and a couple of other people, Shirley, and there were various other couples of challengers whose name I didn't gather. But it wasn't too bad, but we all arrived in dribs and drabs at the bottom down at Melgarve Bothy, which was somewhat overcrowded, to say the least. Very strange atmosphere in there, all sorts of different people. But anyway, Rose and I decided we want to move on a bit and get down to Garver Bridge, and Shirley decided she'd hobble on and do the same. She's still battling on, bless her. So we walked the extra 5k last night, arriving down at Garver Bridge about 7 o'clock-ish, 7:30, and there are 2 other challenger couples and 2 solos, but everybody was bedded down for the night, so there was no chit chat. Heavy rain during the night, and we're now over here it's soggy underfoot, taking the path from Garver Bridge up to Geel Charn. Well, I use the word path loosely. It starts off with a bit of a path, and then it's just this battle through knee-deep bracken, wet peat and moss. There's a dark cloud over us, but I think it's blowing over. And it's just a slog. This is the downside to it all now, is that when it does get wet and the route assessors say it might be boggy on top, this is the type of thing they mean. And this is where it really turns into pure grit and determination to get over these tufts. So it's just all bog and heather and peat and soggy stuff now. Not quite over your ankles, but not far off. And of course there's no paths, so the overseas visitors who assume that there's paths and trails everywhere, or seem to, might need to take that into their calculations. I mean, we've climbed 245 metres and it's taken us, hang on a second, 245 metres, and it's taken us 2 hours, and we can't have gone more than 4 or 5k. So yeah, tough going, but we're almost on the ridge now. Well, I think it is, of the tump beforehand, just above Garver Bridge, and we hope the growing is going to be a bit easier up here. Hopefully just rock and short heather. Otherwise everything else is working out okay. All the gear's working out okay, the food's working out okay. I don't think we've got any stories to tell about anything, have we, Rose? Equipment, everything's alright? We all had our mood swings, our blues. Sometimes your feet just hurt beyond recognition and you're just fed up with the whole thing. Some people have had some serious blisters, other it's just the lugging of the weight. And really, it is true, keeping it lightweight as possible is absolutely vital to the pleasure of the trip. I have heard there's a couple of army lads doing it, and they're just doing it with day packs, and they're running over the peaks, which is great, except the rumour is one of their mums is meeting at the bottom with a camper van and feeding them and bedding them for the night, which is not really in the spirit of the thing. So I understand if that's true, allegedly, as they say. Well, we just got to the first ridge before we have the climb up to Geel Charn. As you can probably tell, the breeze is very, very slight. We're looking a bit down back to the valley towards Melgarve Bobby, and it's sort of bathed in patterns of sunshine. I'd say about 50% cloud at the moment, only one black one, and that's hovering over us ominously. But glorious views, eh, Rose?
Yeah, it's stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. It's worth the climb.
We've got a long day today if we're going to get around this ridge and get down to Kingussie, so we better get on with it.
I hope you can hear the skylarks as well. Fantastic. Just the river in the background.
Once we finally made our way to the top of Geelcharn, the long 10-kilometre walk across the peat bogs on the monoliths to Carn Ban began. In 2005, I got slightly misplaced up here due to the gentle undulation of the terrain, countless streams of peat to wade round and through, and by not paying attention to the subtleties all around me. This year, I focused on everything, and thankfully the weather was reasonable, so visibility wasn't an issue. By the time we got to Carn Ban, our legs felt it had already been a very long day, wading through the soft peat. A new, cold, bitter wind from the west was relentlessly driving down our necks, and this was to last for the rest of the trip to the coast. There's no real escape route from here, so we thought we would carry on to Ambodach along the established path, which zigzagged around boulders, rocks, pockets of snow and puddles of wet peat. The rolling action on the feet was beginning to take its toll, and my blisters were now coming thick and fast. It was very, very cold, and with nowhere to rest out of the wind, we just ate our chocolate bars and carried on. "Well," said Rose, "at least it isn't raining." And with that, a black cloud appeared out of nowhere to dampen our spirits with a clap of thunder. Once we had the waterproof gear on, she said, "OK, so we're wet, but at least we have visibility." True, but not for much longer. Almost at Ambodach, the cloud dropped along with the temperature, and visibility went down to below 10 metres. It was already 7 p.m, and we'd been going for 12 very long, very tiring hours. I knew we weren't going to make it to Kingussie, so we just had to get off the top and into the gully somewhere safer. Ambodach were just in front of us, so we followed the stream down into the gully just below the rock faces, where we found a flat area, and we pitched the flapping tent in the heavy wind by an angry stream. Once inside, we collapsed, exhausted, ate our food, and then spent a very cold night listening to the wind beat the tent ferociously. All I could think about was the small titanium pegs holding it down. Would they hold or not? Well, in the end, they didn't budge an inch, but that didn't stop me worrying.
What were your impressions of yesterday's day then, now that we're waking up shattered?
Almost bloody long walk. Very mixed underfoot and interesting. I mean, I've not had to cross snow before over stream, so the sort of hesitancy about taking a risk. Do I go across? Am I going to go through? Climbing through the peat. So really interesting in that way. What was brilliant was to see some of the hares up there. Fantastic camouflage, and even better was a ptarmigan, which I almost stood on, and she was crouched down right on the top. She had a little nest, and she looked at me and I looked at her, and I sort of tiptoed around and she stayed put, but fantastic camouflage. And also superb the grouse up there. So it was really great to see those things which you probably wouldn't see lower down, which was great.
And how are you feeling this morning?
Shattered.
I must admit, everything aches this morning. Everything aches. We've only got a few K to go anyway.
Great. Oh, for a shower.
Shower and a cup of tea.
Oh, and a biscuit.
And although the weather was pretty foul outside the tent, inside the tent we created a little cocoon of pleasure, because we were able to go through all the foodstuffs and dig out all the luxury items which we are replenishing tomorrow, or today rather. So we finished off the brandies and the whiskies and the chocolate that somebody very kindly sent us for our anniversary, and had a nice meal of fish pie and mash and anything else that was edible at the time. It was lovely, wasn't it?
Sultana's apples and custard.
Sultana's apples and custard. The hard part actually was staying awake to eat it all. There was a lull in the weather, and we managed to pack up our tent and equipment and get going in between the sort of rainstorms, and we managed to start to come down from the mountain. We found that we had come down slightly in the wrong gully. Everything was where I expected us to be. However, we were just sort of 100 or a couple hundred metres early in coming down a gully, but we had to get off the mountain last night because of the weather conditions. So we just had to backtrack across some of the bracken and the streams before we picked up the Land Rover track, which eventually brought us down to Kingussie. Even so, it still took us a good 4 hours to get down. We camped at about 725 metres last night. So it was, relatively high, and certainly the wind, the tent took a good hammering from the wind last night, and it kept going until we got down to about 400 metres, and then the wind suddenly dropped, and it became a very pleasant morning's walk. But we made it to the Tipsy Laird in Kingussie at about sort of midday-ish, I suppose. And we decided to have a day of rest. So it's been quite good to get all the gear cleaned and washed, to actually get some salad and some fruit into us, and have a good cooking session. Just had lovely jacket potatoes and things. Bumped into Barbara Peers and her walking partner a few moments ago. I might catch up with her if I can sometime this trip. And there are a handful of French visitors in the hostel, but all the other challengers seem to have come through last night, and I believe there was a good 10 or so that have obviously moved on to Glenfeshie or further beyond. So that pretty well wraps up Thursday. A day of rest, recuperation, topping up on the food stakes, tending to the injuries and the aches and pains. We only got a few blisters, which is quite nice, but for some reason I have been absolutely bitten to death this year, whether it's because of the sudden weather before we arrived and it brought out all the midges or whatever, I don't know. But I am not using gaiters this year. I've brought them, but I haven't used them because the trousers have, the Terra trousers have been absolutely fantastic and gone down well over the boot. But it would appear that the little beasties have managed to get in and have a good go at me. So I've got quite a few bites on my legs, and I gather several other people have been the same as well. So it may have been something to do with the early spring, or the late spring rather. So that about wraps it up from here. Tomorrow we're heading over to Glenfeshie, and then we're making a decision whether to go up over the top of the Cairngorms or go down to White Bridge via the established path up the Glen. Haven't decided really which way to go. We'll see what the weather's like tomorrow. The forecast at the moment is pleasant for Friday and pretty lousy Saturday, and I don't really want to be anywhere near the top if the weather turns nasty once again.
This brings us to the end of part 4. In the next episode, we hear from Barbara Peers, Susan McGarvey, Caban Chamberlain and the infamous Terry Leyland. We head over the Larry Garoo and down into the biggest flesh pot of the trip, Saturday night at the Fife Arms in Braemar.
Have you had enough, or do you want some more?
That's Podcast Bob's challenge story so far, to be continued.
Backpackinglight.co.uk.
Go lighter, go faster, go further.
To subscribe to our show, please follow the instructions on our website or search for us in the iTunes directory.
This brings us to the end of our programme for this evening.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear or see more from our extensive free library, please visit theoutdoorstation.co.uk.